Mais uma vez, boa tarde, bem-vindos. Depois dos
Welcome to.
aceder.
Once again, we're going to have a look at the. We're going to continue. I'm going to look at the state of the nation of communications. Another one of the major debates that streaming and here paying a lot of attention to. And so this is in English and Portuguese and in sign language, we're going to be able to follow this. And we're going to the state of the nation of communication with Antonio Costa. Welcome.
Debate.
Welcome to another debate in the state of the nation of communications. We're going to finish this very relevant. This is how we're going to finish this this Congress. So we have a new government now. It's a good way to start. So I'm going to ask Sandra Maximiano, the president of ANACOM, to the floor. Well, first of all, good afternoon to everybody, and I would like to thank you for the invitation to be here. I'd like to thank you, Engineer, to be here as a keynote speaker in this session on the state of the nation of communications. So it's exactly 5 months since I accepted the challenge to preside the ANACOM, I did this exclusively, and as you know, because I wanted to contribute to the regulation of excellence, and that is would be independent, active, with respect for the ethics and social responsibilities, and open to dialogue with stakeholders. And so, and here I mentioned the consumers, the operators, the representatives of the academia. And so I wanted to have the dynamism is an essential ingredient. And so, just like any other sector, I have no doubt at all that the sector of communications has suffered deep impacts with the introduction of new technologies. In this evolution, this technological evolution, the regulator cannot be left behind as to the adoption of technologies, for example, of AI. And so these topics have a potential to contribute to the increase of the efficiency of the monitoring of the fulfillment of rules through a monitoring more efficient and continuous monitoring that will minimize the impact of the regulations on the consumers. It helps, also helps to fulfill future needs. Artificial intelligence can be applied in the provision of radio electric spectrum in the optimization of the licenses, and it's clearly that these artificial intelligence systems have created a revolution, and so that's so. I would like to point out the excellent work carried out by the vision team of ANACOM in the platform and Excel, the AI analysis about on the experience of consumers. And so this will help identify the levels of dissatisfaction, consumption, and other behaviors of an analytical interest, namely in social medium. Not only the transformation, the digital transformation has an impact on the on this, which is absolutely fundamental for this future. And so the context, the challenges for the regulator are greater. So I would like to mention some that could be analyzed in big data, data analytics, and artificial intelligence create competitive advantages in communication to companies. We have to think about the implications of the dynamic and the competition of the sector itself. Secondly, we have to be aware that telecommunication company bring about the digital strategies of other companies in different sectors, and that is why they are an essential part to guarantee that there's no imbalances in context of disconnectivity. And so in a context that we hope to be innovative, we have to embrace this regulatory sandboxes in order to experiment the artificial intelligence applications in a flexible regulatory framework to be aware of the risks. Artificial intelligence can be used to influence opinions and the choices of users and consumers that does not correspond to their interests. Fifth, the possibility to personalize offers may increase the discrimination of prices, and theoretically, and the stock companies can approximate the discrimination of prices, which increases efficiency but leaves the transfer of the surplus from the consumer to operators. And so the greatest challenge, and to the regulator and operators, has got to do with the recruitment of the and retaining talent. And so that is why we have to have a greater cooperation with education from pre-primary to university. And so the digital era has to take into account the instruments of the different players and the different services offered by the electronic communications operators. In this digital environment, there are new challenges on the way, new ways to defend the interests and rights of the users, and to make information available, to fight illegal content and disinformation, and to promote information, sustainable development and competition. In Portugal, ANACOM and ERCANGAT are the entities competent in these areas, and so ANACOM is responsible for the supervision and application of the regulatory regulations of digital services in Portugal. This regulation established various obligations for providers in relation to the nature of the services they provide. In terms of new competences, I would like to remind you that ANACOM is the entity that regulates spatial activities, and so we have two licenses in Mars, and it's in the 26th. Recently, EIST start one of the Institutes Polytechnic, even though we have new responsibilities related to space and digital. The main mission of ANACOM is to regulate electronic and postal communications, and the promotion of competition is set out by law. And so the dynamic of the Portuguese market of the electronic communications in recent years has shown that there is an offer of very great quality of services, but there are packages which are more and more homogeneous and leading to the perception of lack of competition in the sector, which justifies the poor mobility of users even after the period of loyalty, fidelization, loyalty. Prices, for example, we've seen that in March 24, the average rate of prices on telecommunications in Portugal was 5%, whereas in the European Union was 1.2%. The rate of penetration of broadband, mobile broadband is quite low, a lot lower than the European average. And for the statistics, we're not talking about lower digital literacy, because the fixed one's higher, but the prices of the mobile services. So with a view, with looking at competition, and I'd like to point out to the creation of the conditions so that companies can compete actively in the market. Soon, the new operator, DG, will enter the Portuguese market, which will lead to a creative reaction and really competitive of computers. I know that some of these operators are a little bit worried about the impact of a new operator, but contrary to unlike the media that we talked about here and the reduction of media in of the audience in the traditional 5G virtual networks, industrial verticals. Virtual reality has increased, and I think there will be space for opportunities to be greater than risks. Secondly, I'd like to point out to the connectivity, specifically the regulation wants to promote investment, so thus benefiting the access to physical infrastructures of the Altice groups at regulated prices. And in the case of investment in its own network, when it's not possible, the access of the fiber or optic fiber of the Altice group was regulated so that the competition can use these services. I would like to point out the role of ANACOM in the question of connectivity and competition. In here, I'd like to point out the works of to promote efficient conditions and specific legislation regarding the infrastructures for electronic networks, and the study and analysis of the technical and financial configuration of Railcom and the tender for the right areas, and about the measures in terms of one side of supply. There's already an electric spectrum, which is an essential instrument for the promotion of competition. As the spectrum is public, this management requires a and added social responsibility. In this way, it is possible to promote the coverage of mobile services in the whole country, including in areas that the market is not encouraged to cover. And so, therefore, in the 5G auction for licenses, we're working to guarantee that we will efficiently accompany the fulfillment of these obligations. I would like to say that the management of the spectrum goes way beyond the obligations that we propose when we renew the right to use them. The international planning of the spectrum is an essential component of the management of these resources. And so ANACOM developed a very intensive work of preparation and monitoring of the decisions of decisive for the future use of the spectrum within the radio communications international conference in December 23. The planning of the spectrum is fundamental to guarantee that there's enough spectrum to appropriately develop the new mobile technologies which allow the conditions of connectivity to exist in the country. As to 5G connectivity, the business opportunities and the monetization of 5G are multiple and varied. And here we've had an example and several. ANACOM has contributed to the vitalization of these opportunities on the one hand as a facilitator to use innovative applications in the area of 5G and preparatory concepts of 5G, and having authorized a number of tests and trials of technologies by universities and industries in pioneers in this type of services. And on the other hand, through the publication of different case studies and use cases of 5G technology in social media, 5G portals. I'd also like to point out that this year that we're going to have an ANACOM conference in the second week of September on the 5G, the future today, and I think that we are all working together for this. And so the action of ANACOM is not only in the light of supply, but the demand is also very important to defend the rights of consumers. In terms of universal services, we're talking about the supervision of the universal service, and the objectives of performance are related to the universal service. And so after the public consultation, which is entered, we're trying to create an appropriate balance between concerns and rights of users and the sustainability of the sector in the beginning of this month, we have submitted the final proposal to the government. In terms of electronic proposals, there are work associated with the supervision of the social tariff and the access of broadband internet, and so there are corrective measures to guarantee the transparency of contractual clauses of the three major operators, respecting the yearly increase in prices, as well as in 23 the decision adopted to prevent situations of discrimination traffic in tariffs with zero rate applications vis-a-vis the rest of the traffic. In 24, a regulation was approved for the access to the disabled, and such challenges related to the complexity of services, and so there were measures that were established to guarantee a balance instead of having biases. Digital literacy is what we want, and we want to protect the more vulnerable groups of users, especially. It is important to explore the importance of human behavior, incorporating this knowledge in an integrated regulatory approach. Finally, I would like to mention a very important point, that is the security of the network is essential for the full fulfillment of its potential in order to protect society and economy and guarantee the technological sovereignty of the country. There has been added communication with the companies to increase the security and the resilience of the communication sector. And so the creation, for example, there's been a task force, CSERT-ANACOM, which made up of a number of IT experts who are going to support the community in the recuperation of a number of security incidents and to help organizations reduce the impact and to prevent serious incidents. ANACOM is committed to transporting the directive Nistos to guarantee a higher level of cyber security in the European Union, as well as a harmonisation of the national legislation to accommodate this directive in order to prepare the sector and minimising the costs of the new legislative framework. ANACOM has been accompanying the increase in fraudulent practices, phishing or identifiers of messages smishing, and so with relative entities with the National Cyber Security Institute, Security Police Operators of Electronic Communications, and AMA. AMA and the banking services that has suffered a lot with these fraudulent practices. It has adopted the necessary steps to find solutions to mitigate this issue. I would also like to point out the work that has been developed in cooperation with the Planning Committee for SPEC, presided by ANACOM, especially with regard to the identification of critical infrastructures in the sector, which in order to be identified could be the object of appropriate protection of the specificities finally, and so within the scope of the toolbox 5G, which created a reference to be followed in terms of the security of 5G networks in all countries of the European Union. ANACOM developed works with the electronic communication operators in order to guarantee appropriate implementation to guarantee a minimum impact in the communication sector. To conclude, it is impossible to imagine a world working offline, even for just a few hours. We have gone from sporadic communications model to a continuous model of communications. We by default hyper-connected. The kind of communication services are part of people's lives and companies, governments, and so I promise that ANACOM is ready to develop its mission and to promote the competition and help users and embraces the environment of safe communications and was to develop the communication sector and the country. Thank you very much. The lady was reading a text that was not handed into the interpreters. Thank you very much.
Mais uma vez,
Once again, good afternoon. To emphasize Anacom's CEO's return, Miguel Almeida, Luís Lopes, Ana Figueiredo, thank you for your presence. Let me mention three notes. Perception, lack of competition, price increase in Portugal higher than EU average, creative reaction to the new entrant, and transparency, information transparency for topics. And if you get it, starting with the European context, a year ago, the four of us spoke about the European context as opposed to the American one. The geopolitics aggravated, exacerbated competition, but we have 38 companies with 500,000 clients in Europe, 3 in China, 7 in the States, and in Japan as well. How can companies compete in this context? Above all, well, good afternoon. And I'd like to congratulate APDC for its 40th anniversary in the name of Rogério Carapuz. It's a pleasure to participate in this conference. The European context doesn't show that many variables have changed. There are challenges in our sector, loss of profitability felt in the last 15 years, exacerbating in the last year and a half, since we are an intensive capital sector that needs investment capital, and access to this investment is more difficult because of the high interest rate experienced in the last year and a half. There have been concentration operations with more mobile with Orange, concentration operation of Vodafone in UK, and 2 operations, Fast Web from Vodafone. So these were the signs. This was the consequence of the operators contradicting this loss of profitability, obviously with creative solutions to their business, optimizing the cost structure, but it's obvious, as you've referred to earlier, you wanted to mention that for each European operator, we serve 500,000 subscribers, while in the States there's 7 million customers. It's a sector with a it's a capital intensive sector, and scale has to be guaranteed through regulation policies, allowing us to create partnership ecosystems and also gain scale and concentration. In a country like Portugal with 10 million inhabitants, we have the same number of operators like a country like Germany or the United States with 300 million inhabitants, and profitability is very different. Now we have sought with their strong points to counter the trend, find solutions, and fight the new entrants. And also what was said earlier, we're going to detail the action, reaction, and strategy in Portugal. Luís Lopes, digital decade 2030 difficult to achieve. Is it possible? We have a digital decade, the European target 2030, very ambitious objectives in its framework with the competition. Can we achieve it? To take stock of this path, this Vodafone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the invitation addressed, especially during APDC's 40th year. I'm going to answer the question by speaking of Europe as a whole. Europe has been losing competitiveness significantly to the States and China. The European GDP 30 years ago, the European GDP went down in relation to 4% to the countries I've just mentioned, not only because of geographic effects, but there are other effects why Europe is losing competitiveness. Recently, a report was published by the European Commission, which refers to the e-communication role as well as their competitiveness, in particular in the EU. And regarding this subject, one of the problems that the EU is suffering is the question that was discussed, which is lack of scale. And since there isn't sufficient scale, there isn't much attractiveness for investment. The digital objectives that were mentioned earlier will be more difficult to implement. And then there will be more subsidies, more public support, because there's going to be a lesser there's going to be not much appetite, that is to invest with speedier networks, 6G or other grid generations. So 6G has already been discussed. So you're making money with the 5G. This industry hasn't stopped with the technological innovation. Recently, we launched a speed accessing fiber, which has not much parallel in Europe, 10 gigabyte speed, to give you an example. Miguel, in this concept, Europe prepares many reports. The assessment of telecommunication in the economic context, digital transition. Can we continue on speaking about digital transition? It compels to a European context, which is difficult. Policies and decisions in concrete to create the conditions for investment do not accompany that discourse. Thank you for asking me this question. It's a pleasure to sit with the main players in the sector. We only meet once a year, and so let me emphasize how important it is to me once again. And there's a problem, that is the reports. Luis mentioned the white paper published 2 or 3 months ago, led the report also. And there seems to be a clear consensus in Europe on essential topics, the essential digital infrastructures for the future of Europe, Europe's competitiveness. A clear recognition from the European Commission led the report that the current situation is not sustainable. The return on capital does not cover the cost in Europe. It's impossible to attract private investment with this type of remuneration. And there's also a consensus at an EU level that this situation has to change urgently and quickly. And this European reality is maximized in Portugal because we've spoken about Germany, 8 times our size, and it has the same number of operators as in Portugal with 10 million inhabitants. So something has to change in regulation. And this is more or less explicit in the letter report, which is to pinpoint the following. the recent policies that some countries have implemented, including Portugal, to promote new entrants is an error and has to be reversed. And if not, then this sector will not be sustainable. There won't be investment, no technological innovation. And so we're condemning Europe, and in this particular case to Portugal, in particular Portugal, to lagging behind. We're in the Industrial Revolution, and to fail it will bear will show dramatic consequences, and this concrete risk exists in Europe and also exists in Portugal. Miguel, you're facilitating this context. This is facilitated. Now, we're discussing the European scale, and Vodafone is not able to buy a company in Portugal with a 2% share. There is no explanation. I can't really explain why. A year ago, in this same Congress, I was a bit surprised with that process, and there were some doubts from the competition authority concerning that operation. And 1 year after the operation hasn't yet been completed, there was a probable decision a month ago from the competition authority not to approve this operation. Vodafone, in spite of insists, saying that there's no competition. We're speaking of a marginal share. Then that Vodafone presented several remedies so that this operation would be approved. And these remedies, in our opinion, and factually stronger than the remedies that, and I refer to, between Orange and a mobile operator in Spain. And during that first decision was not accepted. So in Portugal, an operation concentrating third or fourth operator at a very big distance in percentage term will result in a third operator and is considered as being more complicated from a competitional point of view than in Spain. A merger that resulted in the largest operator in Spain. And that in terms of investment, in the case of Vodafone, when such an operation is not approved, Vodafone with foreign shareholders looks at the situation in Portugal, is quite perplexed, does not understand what happened, and this also occurred in the past. The 5G auction, the way it was built and gave rise to that situation, will be speaking during this debate. There's always a very big risk that a foreign investor is not able to understand what's happening in the country, and removes and no longer invests, withdraws investment. And I figured there will be a new entrant this year. There will be a new entrant, and I searched a statement. I searched it and found NECOM's CEOs saying, in other words, we need to shake the market, even in terms of basic offers. We have a lack of diversified offers for a lower for other ranges. Operators have to be creative, have to have a creative reaction. And Altis, you'll be able to answer later on. There will be a new entrant, despite of the Latin report.
Wishful thinking, talvez.
Except for this wishful thinking that we need to reverse the situation. Anna? As for creativity in our company, we've proven throughout time that we were creative, and we knew how to reverse things. We continue on being leaders. we were quite challenged with new entrants, liberalization of telecommunications. When we launched Mail PTTV, we were the first to reverse the disconnection of landlines. When we launched the fixed mobile trend, there were movements not only in the Portuguese market. It's not easy. No, it's not easy, but we respect all new entrants. We've always respected them. Obviously, we don't know what will be this new entrant's position. We can have an idea of how it will be how its position is in other markets, but there's something that we know. There's creativity. We have the solutions. What the Portuguese families seek adequate solutions. In our sector, there's been a change in market share. Vodafone went up. We were not TV leader after Mail TV. We became a leader in the market. There's a high percentage in the last 10 years of changing subscriptions from the Portuguese, changing operators from the Portuguese If we look at revenue between 2012 2020, the sector lost 18% in terms of retail income or retail revenue. We've increased the number of services provided and the quality of these services provided to our customers. The price has suffered, and we've been a sector or an industry. Our sector debates price competitiveness. Competitiveness means more entrants in a sector which is led by capital, not supposed to have multiple players and spectrum available for all if we have a fragmentation of our market. So that's why we have to speak about what we invest, how we've created innovative solutions for our customers, and how this sector in Portugal compares with other European ones from coverage bandwidth. And this was done via the competition between amongst the three, via competition and seeking these solutions. So, Antonio, we're prepared, we respect, but creativity has existed because 10, 15 years ago, with a loss of profitability, led us to a search for creative and optimizing solutions. There are for operators in terms of competition authority. It's desirable to be maintained. How this new entrant can be, how can this new entrant be managed? Guaranteeing what the regulator, I'm going to underline the dialogue between ANACOM and the operators, and the policy did not change as much. It's ANACOM's CEO has only been CEO for the last 6 months. How can you strike a balance between investment, sustainability, profitability? How to strike a balance and a fourth operator or fifth operator, but with a different strength in view of the fourth, which is new. Yes. It's a pity that I didn't hear the ANACOM CEO on an essential point, which is vital to ANACOM's mission in this sector with specific characteristics. The utility, that is how to maximize value to society, goes through striking a balance between competition and investment. And this balance is critical. Any mid long term perspective has to strike that balance. Now, if today, looking at the numbers, NOJ is listed. The numbers are public. Looking at more recent numbers, it does not cover the capital cost, the cost of capital. And it's obvious in a market like the Portuguese one, which is very small, with a fourth operator, this situation is going to get worse in a dramatic way. So, to ignore the fact that unequivocal, recognized by the European Commission, recognized by all entities that have been covering that subject, that the future goes through guaranteeing investment and finding a new balance between competition and investment, striking a balance, and to emphasize positively the new entrant and not referring to the operator's sustainability, saying that they'll have the opportunity to get revenue, which is a bit of a fixing, is diverting what is essential, and it's a short-term vision, which has been the standard in Portugal in regulation in particular, and which will bring about important consequences. Going back to inverting or reversing things, the path is simple and it's unavoidable, inevitable. And I think it will happen. Portugal is slower, it's a tradition, and it goes through consolidation. You might think it's strange that I'm speaking about consolidation when commercially the new operator hasn't come in, but telecommunication markets exist all over the world. There are experiences, examples. We're not inventing anything that is new, but there is a dimension maximizing that has to strike a balance between competition and investment. And for the Portuguese market, it's obvious that this dimension cannot be superior to three. Let's not speak about populism, price populism, services, and so on, because we're not actually answering the real issue. Now, the success of this regulator and also the government is to create the consolidation conditions to incentivize, boost that it happens. If not, then Luis mentioned that this industry is constantly updating technology and it will continue on doing so. Now, if we do not solve that dilemma, that problem, no, but it will have dramatic consequences for the country because we'll be lagging behind. We'll be behind. So operators have invested in 5G. The grid is almost available with a coverage, as Anacom's CEO mentioned, the assessment of commitments made, but they're not able to cover 5G. We're not yet there, but it seems that we're discussing two worlds which are parallel. I'm going to answer your question, but let me make two comments to what was said. And to when we speak of this, of the new operators, I've been working in the industry for a long time. I remember a fourth mobile operator, Oniway, that should have entered the market, disrupting it. And it ended up by never being an entrant because it was concluded that the market has no scale to operate in a profitable way. This the number of with so many operators. And what's happening is apparently in Portugal, there might not be, in Portugal, you cannot have consolidation less than if one with less 2% cannot consolidate with other operators. So I disagree with what Miguel said about the option being consolidation. I see no consolidation, possible consolidation in the market because there's a precedent which is being open to this, which is surprising. So maybe a business plans that would go through a future consolidation process can be a business model that sees some difficulty concerning these different assumptions. We're speaking about the same thing. So investment was made. The three operators invested and cannot cover or charge. So Vodafone has been in Portugal for the last 30 years and has gone through 3, 4, and 5G, gone through different cycles. So we follow a long-term perspective. Investment was accelerated. We lost a lot of time. So in 3 years, we made a strong effort to put Portugal with one of the best 5G coverage, one of the best in Europe. We can debate who has the best mobile network. Each of us have received different awards and prizes. So this effort was made, and we believe that sooner or later we will be receiving from the consumers and our entrepreneur customers' preference. If we cover only 5G, we would, the first not saying only that we would do so, because 5G will play a fundamental role in the digital transition we mentioned earlier. So we want to promote the 5G adoption. And Figueiredo, consolidation is a path and selling as well, because international shareholders look at this market with their own reality context internationally. In Alti's case, is it this framework explaining why Altis is selling? As you understand, I cannot comment any potential operation ongoing. I can't make any comments, but what I can say is that my team and I, we have a strategic plan defined 2028 with defined targets, and we're concerned how do you convince an international shareholder? It can be more difficult because he's international to invest in this context. It's not only the Portuguese market, because of its size, faces other challenges because of a scale effect. But in Europe, if we see what's happening in the European market, European operators, if we take a look at Telefonica, other markets like Orange, Deutsche, all operators to their country of origin, the profitability, there's been a loss of profitability and revenue, and there are a EBITDA and revenue flat. When we look at other markets that have dimension like the American one, or strongly developed like in Latin America, other larger markets such as Brazil, or in Africa, or Asian markets. So referring to what was just said and adding on the targets, either the digital transition, digital transition, energy transition, but without digital transition, there's no energy one. At this moment, we know that will be 90% from the gigabyte society. 50 million Europeans which won't have access, and 220 billion euros are a lack of investment. So, in view of what we're commenting, how we're going to attract investors in London, in New York, investing looks at the more attractive sectors in the last 10 years. We went from the top 5 more attractive to the top 5 of the less attractive sectors. This has led to seeking to for asset disposal, sharing network investment in new generation platforms and generation network. And we have to collaborate a lot more amongst us, not only nationally, but within the media and within a platform developed in collaboration, or European space monitoring 5G. So we're working with different systems. Now, about 5G, I think it's too early to speak because we're still at an initial stage and it depends on customer adoption, companies, development of solutions, platforms, investment, not only depending on us, but other important players as well in the market. But surely enough, we seek situations. We need to consider that Europe is at a crossroad. Um, Europe is losing competitiveness, not only digitally but economically, and we need to seek to create the conditions that investment comes to Europe, and that Europe can maintain its social economic model. So regulation, not only in one area, safety and others, security. We have over a regulation. We've already mentioned that we have to promote, and this is what I was referring to promote not only public regulatory policies promoting, and we need to focus the promotion or new entrants and to create more competition, and then we forget the quality of service, promoting investment and investing in cloud or AI, new technological platforms. Everybody's discussing AI. There's no congress, no conference we attend where AI is not being debated. Nobody discusses access, and access is guaranteed by us.
But isn't it early to assess the digitalization ability of 5G? Well, the indicators are not brilliant, but it's still early. We have to make, for example, for 5G, in order to be profitable, we have to have an ecosystem that will involve many other industries that will allow it to take full potential of 5G. It's still early, but I think that I think it would be irresponsible to think that the first signs are not good. What about this cost zero of 5G? So what are you going to charge more to justify the investment in 5G? We don't want to charge more in other places. No, the rest of the industry, the characteristics of this industry, I mean, to create value for society. This is a characteristic of the industry. We've already had a number of technological waves, 3G, 4G, 5G. As Anna said, in the last couple of years, we've been making all the investments in 4G, and now we've done it in 5G. That is, before we got to 5G, the revenues have dropped. Now, that is not dramatic. But what to maximize the value for society and companies and families is to create the conditions for operators to make the investment in technological updating. And so this doesn't mean that the return has to come from increasing prices, but the equation has to make sense, which is important. It doesn't make much sense today. We have to think what it's going to be like tomorrow, and it doesn't have to go through a direct monetization of 5G, just as the same case as 4G, and no doubt it will go through fiber. But this is the name of the game. And that's how the market works. And we have to think that to continue to work, it has to be sustainable and there must be investment. And this is fundamental. So we're going to continue to the investment capacity, but I want to go back to what Anna said. That is the perception of lack of competence and the context of packages. I'm going to have to disagree. I think this is an erroneous interpretation based on a narrative that was created over a certain period of time that doesn't really correspond to reality. I mean, Portugal is in the tail of Europe and digital literacy and family income is the top 3 in Europe in terms of subscription of high debit services. How is it possible to have this equation? This is possible. This it's not worthwhile to go and get these the part of this, that, and the other, which is only possible to have an availability of this high debit services. If people subscribe to it, I'm not talking about the coverage, I'm talking about the penetration rate. If people subscribe to it in a country where digital literacy is lowest, and income is lowest, it's because the prices are competitive. And so even this question of the growth crisis, our revenues dropped. We had 2 cycles of investment, 3. We had 4G, 5G, fiber and 5G, and revenues dropped. And some technology is more efficient. There's obviously the ability for new investments with more efficiency to guarantee this profitability. When you make these comparisons, and maybe in other countries, in the specific area for us, so cross-cutting, the rates of the ANACOM charges having had an increase of 28%, so we have to pay, but to bear all this. It's not reality in other countries. In terms of the quality of services today, we have 27% of the population covered by 5G, but the quickest 5G in Europe. And so they have we have a coverage of fiber networks, which is without comparison. And some countries, for example, have for public financing, but that's not the case here. We want to provide families and Portuguese companies high quality services at accessible companies, as the figures show. So we have to accompany the prices, and we have to guarantee this sustainability and return on investment. I insist, this is very strange to see this position, this national position, because there's no doubt, I mean, it's true that between words and actions, politicians have a delay in Europe as well. But there's no doubt at all that on the white paper of the European Union, the profitability of the sector in Europe is much lower than in other major global players. And it's and something has to be done, because it can't continue. Instead of discussing this in Portugal, I mean, we made mistakes in the past, but what we're going to do now, in order to redress this and to make sure that the capacity, that's the technological innovations that are going to be necessary in the future, how we're going to guarantee this. And so this is what the discussion is, and we're saying it's fantastic, we're going to have another operator to destroy this equation. So Luis Lopes, well, I totally disagree with this story, that there's no competition in this market. Well, an assumption that was put forward quite a few times by a few people said that there can be no competition because you have your packages and prices are very similar that you all have, and would like to, so I would like to demystify this point, because that is not correct. Because what exists in this market is a competition, an almost instantaneous competition. 1 week ago, one of the competitors here in this table, I'm not going to say which one, made a very aggressive promotion in the area of mobile packages. The next day, I had my team saying they were going to are we going to replicate this offer? Are we going to do something different or not? And this is our market. This is constant answers to promotions that are made because there's a great war to gain market share. And again, Vodafone has again a substantial quota of the fixed business, and we had 0, and organically we have increased 20% in terms of share. But because the prices of services, Vodafone is distinguished because of the services it provides, and we can look at lots of data that can prove this. And the prices are variable in the middle of various variables, and because people decide what they're going to adopt. And to conclude that the sector is not competitive because it has similar packages, I think that it doesn't make sense. We're going to have a new entrant that's going to bid out publicly. It's going to have cheaper packages. How is this going to condition the strategy of Vodafone. I don't know the new entrants in Portugal. Obviously, we know who's Digi in other markets, but in Portugal, we don't know this. So the only thing that I know about the Portuguese market is the things I read on the ground, and I read that it's an operator that has a workforce, a temporary workforce in Portugal. I see that a number of vehicles setting up fibre network vehicles with a foreign license plate. So I presume that in order to provide low prices, they're not going to pay the employees very much. I imagine they've got have a different model. The proposal of Vodafone is totally different. The quality of the infrastructures that they have, people with quality, and we pay people. We pay well. We increase prices in January because we increase all the costs, especially including what we give to people. So it's not possible to increase the electricity because of inflation. So it's not possible to operate. So we have to increase the prices because in industry has more costs. So this is a reflection I would like to make about the new operator. But how do you look forward? And so how are you going to guarantee the investment capacity? What are the alternatives? Luis thinks consolidation is not possible. What's the alternative? To guarantee competitiveness is to guarantee that consumers prefer and our products and services. It's the only way. I know there's a context which affects the three operators, obviously, and it's paradoxical in terms of what we were discussing. There's going to be more competition with the new entrants, and it's going to have less competition or greater difficulty in concentrating the suppliers. And so there's deliberation on replacing the Huawei in replacement. So equipment is going to be replaced, and so it allows two providers, three operators, which is going to have more competition on the one hand of the market and less competition on the side of the suppliers. In the case of Altis, how are you replacing networks? Before I answer your question, I would just like to make another comment on this about packages and lower prices. We have an operator which is new and didn't get more than 2% market share. It's proved that competition is because of it's created because of differentiation, and so we are going to compete through differentiation. And so I can't tell you what our plans are, but this is how we're going to do it. And I would like to say the following, and this is what we did in the last 2 years. We had updated prices are based on inflation, so it's different than increasing. And it's just what. So I think it's important to say that Portugal was not used to this. I worked in various markets where there was inflation, and you have to update prices every year. But in relation to the questions of high-risk vendors and suppliers, well, it's obvious that the fact that we restrict the number of high-risk vendors, we will decrease the options of being able to take options. There are many manufacturers, because there hasn't been a consolidation, because obviously this has become in the global industry, and so there's been this consolidation. So we are a bit concerned about the timing of the decision. The timing of the decision is taken later, after. That is when, 18 years after the implementation rollout of infrastructures, based on a toolbox that each European country has provision. Obviously, I think that we're all concerned, and we're very concerned about critical infrastructures and the security of our infrastructures, and that is why we have a policy of diversification of supplies. So are the deadlines to replace the infrastructure, and how is this going to be carried out, and how is it going to impact the business? This is another component about who's buying, but these policies up to now have been private. It's been private investments bearing this cost, but in relation to deadlines, there's the deliberation on high-risk vendors that determines a deadline. So I think the deadline has to be in line with the feasibility of the operation, and obviously has to be reasonable. Miguel, how do you make this a transformation in this context of the deliberation of these high-risk vendors? Well, we have to highlight the fact that Portuguese deliberation, it goes way beyond the European practice in terms of covering the network. We do not have any problem because in terms of 5G, we didn't have that high-risk vendor. In the case of Vodafone, well, yeah, I agree with what Miguel said. I'd just like to add one point. From a couple of months ago, I feel that in relation to this, there's a greater dialogue now in some of the time where a number of decisions were made in this area. Some decisions were taken which would raise significant operational problems for the country, operational problems that with greater dialogue are now being understood and addressed constructively. I would like to continue on this topic of competition because we talked about infrastructure, but Miguel, how do you make the difference between with the new entrants? So it's going to come in with lower prices. I don't know what the lower ranges. I don't know what that means because in terms of technology, access technology, fiber is fiber. 5G is 5G network. I don't know whether the lower ranges. I mean, a consumer with a lower profile that will not subscribe to the whole package, but will only subscribe to one packet, one service. There's another doubt. The offers that are only fixed bandwidth with no additional values exist in the market. They do exist, and they have competitive prices in comparison with the offers in television. But the consumers are free to choose, and what they choose, in fact, most of the time, are the offers that have got in television included. Why? Because the value that we're adding in these packages with television is up to certain points subsidized by other services, is extremely competitive. And so these are offers that are given to the consumers. It's false to say that other offers don't exist, but consumers don't subscribe to them because they don't want to. And so I'm asking you, they're not accepted because of the additional value that we put on a package. We're not going to tell us who's got the best television, etc. But it's not a Vanity Fair, but so there's a package with it's got costs, development costs and maintenance costs, which add a real value. And so therefore this additional cost, this premium, if you like, about basic connectivity, makes sense to consumers. And note that I think that it's obvious. I mean, today there was a conference of analysts of that operator who's coming, and he spoke about Portugal. And what did he say? He says our officers in Portugal are going to have television. So it's an illusion to think they're only coming to act. They forgot television. They're going to act with connectivity. No, there's no way. And you can see what was the declarations were made to do. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I read the declarations. I don't believe that they'll lie. Just as Miguel said, consumer choose certain packages and there are other packages available, and they choose the packages with television, because television is still an important factor. So we're in a congress on artificial intelligence, and today it's across the board. And so today, it is what we've been discussing in the last 45 minutes. How is the investment in artificial intelligence, how is this changing your business? And the business is a reality. We've invested in artificial intelligence from what we developed in Altus Labs. We have another patent submitted, and we use this in products and services. And the service at my rail is artificial intelligence incorporated with serving our clients, supervision of networks, and we also have a project who have internal investment of technological transformation, which includes the implementation of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is obviously going to be a tool, a working tool, just as PowerPoint or Excel is today, and we have to be prepared for the use of it. And so we have to get our people to make investments in order to make our organization more flexible and optimize costs and obviously efficiencies. So that is why artificial intelligence for us has been a reality for a while.
Investimos, obviamente, internamente para a nossa operação.
And so we're also investing in creating solutions, developing solutions from our innovation center, and which has been made available to our customers. Now, what I've mentioned is that for AI, you need broadband, you need latents, you need, or Lester, this depends on, it's dependent on the operator. This is the investment where it has to be made. I've had this discussion at a new level, and all EU operators and with the European Commission have been alerting the difficulties. Maybe one day when we stop investing because we have to find the forms to monetize 5G. And it's obvious that the next innovation wave, there might be difficulty in supporting it. But to the present date, with mail or creativity, innovation, creating synergies in sectors that can be complemented to the connectivity we offer our customers, namely by using what we developed through labs to be exporters. There's a market with no regulation, and it's not only limited to 10 million inhabitants and what I can scale at a worldwide level. And also, we have to strike a balance, find a balance, and once for all, as Miguel mentioned, to eliminate some of the dogmas that do not respond to, that do not follow realities with the conceptual theoretical models. It's like an urgency sense companies have continued on investment. They have invested, although and this transformation, which requires a lot of capital in AI. How is it managed in Portugal, in Vodafone? How is it managed? AI requires less capital on one hand, less capital as using AI to improve the in-house processes of a company in terms of business potential to export and sell. And it requires other skills, other competence, a significant scale. And the relevant players in AI, there's no one in Europe. We're speaking essentially of players in the States, United States of America. And we could say why these large technological players still use our grids without remunerating their use. And this was already discussed, but AI AI is running the risk of being similar to where access will be needed, latency, but there's no model to monetize this use of our using our infrastructures. There is a loss of opportunity. How Vodafone, being a group with a presence in many countries, I would like to see, namely, the AI, how it can become a competence center in Portugal. We are pioneers in the Vodafone context in using AI in different business areas. But I would like this to be enhanced and be creating more jobs in Portugal, a center of competency to export that technology. But again, Portugal has to show that it is attractive for that investment. We're a bit pessimistic with these requirements, and namely what was mentioned by Anacom on AI. That is supply personalization and consumer risks. Let me take a step back on what was mentioned about patents and Romanian license plates. The companies we represent play a social role beyond an essential service, which is provided. Two examples of this social role, which has quite an impact, indirect impact on other companies. In Portugal, the company that invested more in R&D was NOS. Out of the two companies that invested more in Portugal, they're present. The two first companies that invested more in R&D, and the company that registered more patents was NOS. So there is here a role played by these companies in attracting talents, developing talents, creating competencies that are critical for other Portuguese companies to accompany the industrial revolution, cannot be ignored, undermined. But not really but misunderstood. Yes, fully misunderstood, totally misunderstood. There is no recognition. It's been 6.5 years that we've had a policy to uh, uh, what was done in a certain period to serve a given agenda. That is to um, say that it's negative. We haven't given up. And let's be clear, why is Europe panicking at least? Why is it raising awareness? Because in Portugal, there was the fiber wave and the 5G, there was investment, it was made, it's being made, essentially made. But it's not the truth in all other countries. That's why there's a sense of urgency that is in the past. We don't know if it will be made in the technologies of the future. I don't know. The merger dossier that was said, but the premises used, and it's very shocking and concerning what was used by the competition authority, because its interpretation of the market is wrong and it has to change. Luis said that he disagreed with me in terms of consolidation, but I'm even sure that I hope that it won't be too late. Yes, when Europe is at this level discussing how it's amended, how to attract investment, guarantee company sustainability, how can we guarantee digitally. So merger, not but which won't change the market structurally. And we're praising the entrance of a new operator as if it was beneficial. It's not an advantage. I hope I hope to discuss this subject with you a year from now. And since it's the end of our talk, and this is very interesting, and what Miguel mentioned, the dossier we consulted, it was said that despite of there being negative net results, how is this feasible with 20% in average what we invest, revenue invested every year of the revenue? So there's a need to understand the sector. There's an urgent need. Obviously, I'm optimistic. And to have a new ANACOP CEO and has shown dialogue, has shown being proactive with the sector operators is the first step of being proactive. Reactive is a first step to be able to listen to each other's perspective and to be able to face the different challenges. I'm duly optimistic. We have a new minister for the infrastructures, and we hope that
Fazer o que é que se espera do novo governo?
what's expected from the new government and minister. I can say what Mayo is expecting, that in 33 days, if I'm not mistaken, that there's a capacity to decide of this sector, because this sector is very important and has been important to develop the country and to establish the grounds for this investment. Let me mention that Meo is not seeking advantage. We don't want mismatches to be created artificially, and valuing investment not during 1, 2, or 3 years, but over decades. And the commitment also promoting innovation, research, and exporting Portuguese technology. It's in this hub. If we want to create a digital economy in our country, we need to think in a 360-degree holistic way and not just introducing competition. Luis, we spoke about ANACOM context. What do you expect from the government, from this new government? Is it an opportunity? Yes, it's always an opportunity to take a look at the sector that over the last decade had the many problems we've debated. And there's a cost opportunity, but you continued on investing that, Antonio mentioned, but it's to look at a glass as if it was half full. If there was a strategic investment in the sector in Portugal, what could have been done? What could be done? And this question is not being answered. As we refer to centers of competency, centers of excellence, there have been losses, and not too long ago, 4 years ago, a decision was made between a center of competencies with highly specialized jobs in technology. A decision was made to set up that center in Malaga, Spain, and not in Portugal. I've heard Miguel mention in this inclined field, uneven field, what to do to straighten it out. I was joking when I said that I only met the members of the panel once a year. There should be a serious debate involving the government, the regulator, and operators together to discuss what we can be done to improve this usefulness. What can be done to improve, to guarantee investment, competition, and this debate does not exist. It's strange. Either the European Commission meets with the larger operators in each country. In those countries, I have knowledge about these examples. operators sit down with the government regulator and discuss together. They exchange views, saying we're going to work together to change things. In Portugal, it does not exist. So what's important to start this talk is that the government. What's important is that there would be a dialogue, that myths be ended, misunderstanding also overcome, to improve the sector, because it will be beneficial for enormous stakeholders. And also, it has to be on the government's agenda. The measures allowing for investment, it seems to be only one, which is consolidation. Thank you. So we're concluding our talk, the remedies. It's not to create the conditions. That's why Luis does not believe in consolidation.
Mas eu,
Para responder à tua provocação, porque é que não parámos de investir? Quer dizer, é sinónimo que estamos a competir.
We're competing. Let me add the will and availability. And operators already also have an association. They can debate, discuss, take positions with more weight, more relevance. And this association represent what the operators. This is provocation. And then passing the floor to the minister. Miguel is finishing his term. We'll see if he'll continue. Altice in his non-selling process. We'll see also what's going to happen with Vodafone, and then see what's going to happen with the new entrant. And next year, this debate might be very different. Thank you so much for participating in this debate on the state of the nation of communication.